Have you noticed it's getting harder to focus, remember things, or think clearly? You're not imagining it. Our world is full of distractions, constant notifications, endless scrolling, and never-ending information. Over time, these habits can weaken our ability to concentrate and learn. But here's the good news. This decline isn't permanent, and you can reverse it. I wrote this book because I experienced these struggles myself. I saw my own mind growing restless, my memory slipping, and my ability to do deep work fading. I realized I needed a plan to take back control, and that self-education was the key. Teaching yourself, on your own terms, isn't just about picking up new facts. It's the best way to keep your mind sharp, build confidence, and stay resilient, no matter your age or background. In these pages, you'll find a step-by-step guide to fighting brain rot, the slow fading of focus and clear thinking. You'll learn how to protect your attention from digital distractions, how to rebuild your brain's strength, and how to keep what you learn for the long haul. You'll see why curiosity matters more than raw willpower, and how small, daily actions can spark big changes. This isn't about working harder or blaming yourself. It's about understanding how your mind works, making simple changes, and building habits that last. No matter how unfocused or stuck you feel right now, you can regain control and enjoy learning again. If you're ready to reclaim your focus, strengthen your mind, and start growing in new ways, this book will show you exactly where to begin. Chapter 1, Wake-Up Call. You used to finish books. You used to think through problems without checking your phone. You used to remember conversations without replaying them 3 times. Now, reading feels like dragging yourself through mud. Your mind wanders mid-paragraph. You open apps without deciding to. You feel busy all day, but can't name what you actually learned. This isn't burnout. This isn't stress. This is brain rot, and it's happening to you right now. Brain rot is the slow erosion of your ability to focus, think deeply, and retain what matters. It's not dramatic. You don't wake up one day unable to read. Instead, you notice reading feels harder. Complexity feels too heavy. Your attention span shrinks so gradually you barely notice until you're stuck in a loop of starting things you never finish. Here's what's actually happening. Your brain is adapting. It's becoming what you repeatedly ask of it. Feed it endless novelty, quick hits, and shallow content. It gets better at skimming, reacting, and hopping. That's not weakness. That's neuroplasticity doing its job. Your brain specializes in the training you give it. The problem is you're training the wrong skills. The shallow thinking trap. You consume more than you create. You skim more than you understand. You react more than you reason. Sound familiar? That's the drift towards shallow processing. It shows up everywhere. Half-reading articles, checking notifications mid-task, bouncing between topics the moment they get difficult. Each time you do this, you're not just being distracted, you're training your brain to prefer surface-level engagement over depth. Modern media is designed to harvest your attention. Infinite feeds remove natural stopping points. Algorithms serve endless novelty. Every scroll teaches your brain to expect something new every few seconds. Fast reward loops, likes, comments, quick dopamine hits weaken your tolerance for effort. Constant switching trains restlessness. The cost? Reading feels harder than it used to. Not because you're less intelligent, but because you've stopped practicing sustained attention. Memory feels leaky because you're not giving your brain time to consolidate information. Deep work feels like climbing a hill in sand because your focus muscles have atrophied. This is the real price you're already paying. And it compounds. The future you're building. If you keep going like this, here's where you land. A life run by impulse instead of intention. You'll default to the easiest input every time. Complexity will feel too heavy, so you'll avoid it. Your goals will shrink to match your attention span. Want to learn a language? Too hard. Build a skill? Too slow. Read that book everyone recommends? Maybe later. The cognitive weakening happens silently. You'll notice lower confidence in your own thinking. You'll depend more on external stimulation to feel okay. You'll struggle to learn new skills quickly because your brain has forgotten how to sustain effort. But here's the part that should terrify you. the person you don't become. There's a sharper version of you locked inside, the one who asks better questions, the one who finishes what they start, the one who can sit with a hard problem and think it through. That person doesn't disappear, they just never get built. Your curiosity dries up, your mind stops surprising you. You settle. The scroll becomes your refuge. Without intervention, you'll keep warming up, but never start. The scroll becomes your default refuge. You'll feel busy but empty. You'll confuse entertainment with recovery, thinking you're resting when you're actually spending cognitive capacity on low-value noise. Your focus window keeps shrinking. Fewer long stretches of real thinking. More frustration with anything slow. Learning starts to feel like pain instead of power. This is the trajectory. Not because you're broken, but because you're being trained, and the training is working. What this book will do. Here's what you'll achieve the first time you go through this book. You'll understand the mechanism of brain rot. You'll identify exactly how your attention is being captured. You'll spot shallow processing habits in yourself without shame or guilt, just clarity. You'll see the winner versus loser gap clearly. Winners guard attention like a life asset. Losers hand it away and pretend fog is normal. You'll choose one subject to self-educate on, not because it looks good, not because someone told you to, because you're genuinely curious. You'll lock a 90-day commitment. No topic hopping, no bailouts. You'll start a simple learning streak, minimum viable daily sessions, one clear next step after each session, a weekly reflection check-in to keep you honest. That's it. No heroics, no perfection, just relentless, structured repetition that rebuilds what's been eroded. The 3-step system. This book follows a specific order because the order matters. Step 1. Defend your attention. You'll reduce major triggers and automatic checks. You'll build focused work blocks that start small and grow. You'll create recovery that doesn't involve feeds. This is where you stop the leak. Without this, everything else collapses. Step 2. Build cognitive strength through self-education. You'll pick one subject you care about. You'll follow a simple learning structure, one foundational resource, one expert voice, one community. You'll use active learning methods that force your brain to process deeply instead of passively consuming. Step 3. Make the gains stick. You'll use recall, spacing, practice, and explanation to turn exposure into mastery. You'll commit to a single subject while varying methods to stay engaged. This is where time becomes compounding knowledge instead of wasted effort. Why this order? You stop the leak before you build the house. Attention defense comes first, because without it, learning never gets traction. You can't study effectively if your phone is pulling you away every 3 minutes. You can't build cognitive reserve if you're constantly fragmenting focus. Curiosity beats discipline long term. Intrinsic drive fuels consistency. Forced effort burns out. That's why choosing the right subject matters more than trying harder. Retention methods turn time into mastery. Without retention, study is just noise. With retention, knowledge compounds. Every session builds on the last. Your brain gets stronger, not just busier. Winners versus losers. Winners treat attention like a life asset. They guard it aggressively. They invest it deliberately. They measure their inputs. They know that where attention goes, capability follows. Losers hand their attention away. They blame lack of motivation. They live in reaction mode, bouncing from stimulus to stimulus. They normalize fog and drift. They say things like, "I'm just not a reader anymore," or "I can't focus like I used to," as if it's a permanent condition instead of a training effect. The difference isn't talent, it's not genetics, it's not even willpower, it's systems. Winners build systems that make depth inevitable. Losers rely on mood and hope. Your move. Brain rot is not your destiny, it's your training history, and training history can be rewritten. This book is your blueprint, not for getting motivated, not for finding your passion, for rebuilding your mind through deliberate self-education, for reclaiming the focus, memory, and thinking power you've lost. The next chapter will show you exactly what brain rot looks like in daily life and how to start interrupting it. But before we go there, you need to understand something deeper: the hidden machinery that keeps you scrolling even when you hate it. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Brain Rot. You know the feeling. You sit down to read something important. Your eyes move across the words. You reach the end of the page and realize you absorbed nothing. So you go back. Same thing. Your mind was somewhere else the whole time, not thinking about anything specific, just elsewhere. That's not a bad day. That's a symptom. Brain rot isn't about losing IQ points or forgetting where you put your keys. It's subtler and more insidious. It's the slow drift towards shallow thinking as your default mode. It's when skimming replaces understanding, when reacting replaces reasoning, when your mind gets restless the moment something requires sustained attention. The term sounds dramatic, but the reality is quiet. You don't notice it happening until you're already deep in it. And by then, you've started explaining it away. I'm just tired. I'm getting older. I've always been like this. None of that is true. What's true is that your brain has been training, and the training is working against you. Why naming it changes everything. Here's why this chapter matters. You can't fight what you can't see. When you call it just tired or lack of motivation, you're diagnosing the wrong problem. Tired goes away with rest. Motivation comes and goes. Brain rot is different. It's a pattern, and patterns can be interrupted. Once you name it, you stop thinking it's permanent. You stop blaming yourself for being weak or lazy. You start seeing cause and effect. You scrolled for 3 hours yesterday? Your focus is weaker today. You spent the week bouncing between shallow inputs? Deep work feels impossible this weekend. It's not mysterious. It's predictable. Your brain stays plastic your entire life. That's the good news and the bad news. Good because it means you can rebuild what's been eroded. Bad because it means you're always training something, whether you mean to or not. Habits reshape neural circuits. Drift becomes direction. The question is, what direction are you building? The behaviors that feed the rot. Brain rot grows from 3 core behaviors. You probably do all of them daily without thinking. First, automatic checking. You reach for your phone without deciding to. You open apps out of reflex, not intent. You check the same feed you checked 5 minutes ago. Each time you do this, you're training your brain to seek novelty on demand. You're teaching it that boredom is an emergency that must be solved immediately. Second, endless low-effort consumption. You watch videos you don't care about. You read headlines without reading articles. You absorb information you'll forget in 10 minutes. This isn't relaxation. It's mental junk food. It feels easy in the moment, but it trains your brain to prefer speed over depth, recognition over understanding. Third, mental switching without closure. You start a task, get interrupted, start another, check a message, return to the first task, forget where you were. You never finish a thought, you never close a loop. Your brain learns to live in a state of constant incompletion. Over time, finishing anything starts to feel unnatural. These behaviors don't feel harmful. That's the trap. They feel normal. They feel like just how things are now. But normal doesn't mean harmless. Normal just means common. The symptoms you can't ignore. The mental symptoms show up in ways you definitely notice. Restlessness with slow tasks. You sit down to work on something meaningful, and within minutes you're itching to check something, anything. The task isn't hard. Your mind just can't settle. Forgetting what you just read. You finish an article or a chapter and realize you retained almost nothing. Not because the material was complex, but because your brain was in scanning mode, not processing mode. Feeling foggy even after relaxing. You spend an hour scrolling, watching, consuming. You expect to feel refreshed. Instead, you feel drained. That's because your brain was working the whole time, just not on anything meaningful. You spent cognitive capacity without building anything in return. But there are hidden symptoms too, ones you might not connect to brain rot until someone points them out. Your curiosity fades. You used to wonder about things. You used to ask questions. Now, you see something interesting and think, huh, cool, and move on. You don't dig. You don't explore. The spark is dimming. Your tolerance for complexity drops. Hard problems used to feel like challenges. Now they feel like walls. You avoid them. You tell yourself you'll come back when you have more energy. You never do. Your confidence in your own reasoning weakens. You second-guess yourself more. You defer to external sources instead of thinking things through. You start sentences with, "I'm not sure," but even when you actually do know, your internal compass gets quieter. These aren't personality traits. They're training effects. The myths that keep you stuck. Most people try to fix brain rot with the wrong tools. They double down on discipline. They tell themselves they just need to try harder. But discipline is a battery, not a solution. It runs out, and when it does, you're back where you started. The system you're fighting is designed to beat willpower. Platforms spend billions engineering ways to capture and hold attention. You're not losing because you're weak. You're losing because you're trying to out-muscle a structural problem. Structure beats discipline every time. Some people think multitasking keeps them sharp. They're proud of juggling 10 things at once. But switching doesn't train sharpness. It trains shallowness. Every time you switch tasks, part of your brain stays stuck on what you just left. That's called attentional residue. It piles up. It makes everything harder. Depth requires continuity, not constant context switching. Then there's the classic, "I'll fix it when life calms down." Life doesn't calm down. It never has. It never will. Waiting for the perfect moment to start is just another form of avoidance. You get sharper by training now, in the mess, with the constraints you have, not later when conditions are ideal. The 3-day rot audit. Here's how you start interrupting the pattern. For the next 3 days, track when you drift into shallow input. Not to shame yourself, not to feel guilty, just to see the pattern clearly. Keep a simple note on your phone or a piece of paper. Every time you catch yourself scrolling without intent, checking reflexively, or bouncing between tasks, write it down. Next to it, write what triggered it. Were you bored? Stuck on something hard? Avoiding a decision? Just saw your phone? After 3 days, look at your list. Circle your top 3 triggers. Those are your pressure points. Those are where brain rot has the strongest grip. Now comes the shift. After consuming any content, article, video, post, anything, force yourself to explain it in one sentence. Out loud or written, doesn't matter. If you can't do it, you didn't actually learn anything. You just recognized information passing by. Then ask, what does this connect to? How does it relate to something you already know? Where could you use it? If there's no connection, it's noise. Let it go. This simple practice, explain and connect, starts replacing recognition with meaning. It forces your brain out of scanning mode and into processing mode. It's uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is the point. That's your brain relearning how to think. Practical moves that compound. Start using one-tab thinking, one topic open at a time. Finish the thought before switching. This sounds simple, but it's brutal if you've been living in chaos. Your brain will resist. It wants the option to bail. Don't give it the option. Add a pause before consumption. Before you open an app or click a link, ask yourself, why am I opening this? If you don't have a clear reason, close it. Most of the time, you won't have a reason. That's the reflex talking, not you. Build micro-depth moments throughout your day. Read one page slowly, actually slowly, then summarize it in your own words. Move on only after the meaning lands. 1 page of real understanding beats 10 pages of skimming. These aren't dramatic interventions. They're small, repeatable moves that retrain your default mode. Over time, they compound. What success looks like. At the minimum, you'll develop awareness. You'll spot shallow mode in real time. You'll catch yourself mid-scroll and think, wait, why am I doing this? You'll interrupt the pattern more often than not. That alone is a win. If you push further, you'll see reduction. Shallow stretches will drop by roughly half within 2 weeks. Focus will return in bursts you can actually feel. You'll sit down to work and stay there. Not perfectly, not every time, but noticeably more than before. At the best outcome, deep processing becomes your new default. Learning feels natural again, not forced. You don't have to negotiate with yourself to start. You just start. Your mind stops fighting you and starts working with you. When it goes wrong. The biggest mistake is turning this into self-hate. You'll spot the patterns and feel disgusted with yourself. Don't. Treat this like debugging a system, not judging a person. You're not broken. You're trained wrong. There's a difference. Another trap, trying to fix everything at once. You'll want to overhaul your entire life in one day. That's ego talking. Pick one trigger from your audit. Work on that. When it's handled, pick the next one. Finally, don't expect instant recovery. Your brain didn't rot overnight. It won't rebuild overnight. Measure consistency, not speed. Did you show up today? Good. That's the metric that matters. Brain rot is beatable, but clarity is just the first step. Next, you need to understand the siege happening around you, the constant assault on your attention that makes shallow thinking feel inevitable. That's where the real battle begins. Chapter 3. Attention Siege. You sit down to learn something. You open the material. You're ready. Then your phone buzzes. Just a quick check. 2 minutes later, you're 3 apps deep, reading something completely unrelated. You snap back, return to the material, read a paragraph. Your mind wanders. You realize you've been staring at the same sentence for 30 seconds without processing a word. This isn't a focus problem. This is a siege. Your attention is under constant coordinated attack. Not from one source, from dozens, feeds designed to never end, alerts engineered to feel urgent, platforms optimized to keep you switching, checking, reacting. Each interruption feels small, harmless even. But they add up, and the cumulative effect is devastating. Here's what most people miss. The problem isn't that you get distracted. The problem is that your brain is being trained to expect distraction. Every few seconds, something new. Every few minutes, a context switch. Your attention never gets to settle. It never gets to build momentum. And over time, sustained focus starts to feel unnatural. Without attention, self-education is impossible. Learning requires sustained focus. Memory needs uninterrupted processing time. You can't build deep understanding in 3-minute bursts between notifications. You can't develop mastery while your brain is constantly being yanked elsewhere. Attention loss is the root of brain rot. Shallow inputs depend on fractured focus. Depth depends on continuity. If you can't protect your attention, everything else in this book becomes theoretical. So this is where we draw the line. The weaponization of your focus. Platforms don't accidentally capture your attention. They engineer it, and they're very, very good at it. Infinite feeds remove natural stopping points. Books have chapters, movies have endings, conversations have pauses. Feeds, they never stop. There's always one more post, one more video, one more thing to check. Your brain never gets a signal that says, okay, we're done here. So it keeps going, and going, and going. Alerts train instant reaction. Every ping, every buzz, every red dot creates a tiny spike of urgency. Your brain learns to treat these signals as important even when they're not. Over time, you develop a reflex. Notification appears, attention shifts. You don't decide to check, you just do. Notifications create false urgency. Most of what interrupts you isn't actually urgent. It just feels that way. Someone liked your post. A sale is happening. A thread got updated. None of this matters in the moment, but your brain doesn't know that. It treats every alert like a potential threat or opportunity that must be addressed immediately. The result? Your attention gets chopped into scraps. You're never fully present anywhere. Part of your mind is always elsewhere, waiting for the next ping, anticipating the next switch. What fractured attention actually feels like. You know the feeling, even if you've never named it. There's the I can't start resistance. You sit down to work on something meaningful and your brain throws up a wall, not because the task is hard, because your attention system has been trained to expect constant novelty. Staying with one thing feels wrong, uncomfortable. Your brain wants to switch. Then there's the I can't stay restlessness. You manage to start, you get a few minutes in, then the urge hits. Check something, anything. You tell yourself you'll just take a quick break. You don't. You fall into a scroll hole and emerge 20 minutes later wondering what happened. Finally, there's the I forgot memory leak. You read something, you watch something, you consume information, but when you try to recall it later, it's gone. Not because your memory is broken, because your brain never had time to process it. You were already moving to the next thing before the first thing could land. This is what fractured attention does. It makes everything harder. Not because you're incapable, but because you're trying to think with a tool that's constantly being interrupted. Here's something most people confuse: rest versus stimulation. They're not the same. Rest restores cognitive capacity. Stimulation spends it. Scrolling feels like rest because it's easy, but your brain is working the whole time, processing images, text, sounds, context switches. You finish a scroll session and feel drained, not refreshed. That's because you just spent an hour doing low-value cognitive work. Real rest is different. It's walking without your phone, sitting quietly, letting your mind wander without feeding it input. That's what actually restores capacity. The lies you tell yourself. Most people defend their fractured attention with myths that sound reasonable but fall apart under scrutiny. I'm productive under constant input. Maybe you're busy, but busy isn't the same as effective. When you're constantly switching contexts, your output quality drops. You might finish more tasks, but each one is shallower, weaker, more error-prone. You're trading depth for speed. And in most things that matter, depth wins. Background media helps me focus. No, it doesn't. It keeps part of your attention elsewhere. You might feel like you're focusing better, but that's because you've trained yourself to need noise. You've created a dependence. Silence feels uncomfortable now, so you fill it. But that discomfort is actually your brain trying to settle into real focus. You're interrupting it before it can. I'll just push harder. Pushing without structure burns out. You can white-knuckle your way through a day, maybe a week, but you can't sustain it. Willpower is finite. The siege is constant. Protection beats pressure. Every time. Building your first defense, focus islands. Here's how you start taking your attention back. You create what I call focus islands. Protected blocks of time where your attention isn't under siege. Start small, 20 to 40 minutes. That's it. Not 2 hours, not all day, just a short block where you do one thing without interruption. The rules are simple, but non-negotiable. Your phone goes somewhere else, not face down on the desk, not in your pocket, somewhere you can't reach it without getting up and walking. Physical distance is the only thing that works. If it's within arm's reach, you'll check it. You won't mean to. You'll just do it. One objective per block, not 3 tasks, not work on the project, one specific thing. Read these 10 pages, write this section, practice this skill. The narrower the target, the easier it is to stay locked in. That's your first island. 20 to 40 minutes, one thing, phone gone, do it daily. Then you expand. Add 5 to 10 minutes per week. Keep the frequency daily. Your focus stamina will grow, but only if you train it consistently. Missing days resets progress. Consistency beats intensity. At the end of each block, write one line, what you'll do next time. Not a full plan, just the next step. Continue from page 47. Work on section 3. Practice the second exercise. This is your re-entry cue. When you sit down for your next block, you read that line and start immediately. No decision fatigue, no warm-up time. You just go. The small moves that compound. Beyond the islands, you need friction. Make distractions harder to access. Log out of apps after each use. Remove shortcuts from your home screen. Disable every non-essential alert. Every extra step between impulse and action gives your brain a chance to catch itself. Train boredom tolerance. When the urge to check something hits, notice it. Don't act on it. Wait 60 seconds. Just sit with the discomfort. Most urges pass if you don't feed them. They're waves, not commands. Let them rise and fall. Protect your first hour of the day. This is critical. 0 feeds before your first learning block. The first input you give your brain sets the tone for everything that follows. Start with depth, and depth feels natural. Start with scrolling, and your attention is fractured before you even begin. These aren't dramatic interventions. They're small structural changes that make focus the path of least resistance instead of a constant battle. What winning looks like. At minimum, you'll achieve stable 20-minute focus. You can start without resistance. You can stay without fighting yourself. That alone changes everything. Most people can't do this anymore. If you can, you're already ahead. Push further and you'll reach 45 to 60 minutes sustained. The urges weaken. They still show up, but they don't control you. You notice them and let them pass. Focus stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like flow. At the best outcome, deep work becomes your normal state. You seek depth automatically. You don't have to negotiate with yourself to start. Learning feels inviting again, not like something you have to force. When it falls apart. The biggest mistake is white-knuckling. You set a 90-minute block on day one and try to power through. You can't. Your focus muscles aren't ready. When this happens, shorten the block. Increase frequency instead. Better to do 4 20-minute blocks than fail at one 90-minute session. Another trap, keeping the phone nearby just in case. There is no just in case. Physical distance. Always. No exceptions. If it's in the room, you'll check it. Your brain will find a reason. Finally, don't expect overnight transformation. You're rebuilding a skill that's been eroding for years. Aim for steady gains, not instant mastery. Did you complete your block today? Good, that's progress. Do it again tomorrow. Attention is the foundation. Everything else builds on this. But even with protected focus, there's another force working against you, one that's even harder to see and twice as addictive. It's time to talk about the loops that keep you coming back. Chapter 4, Reward Loops. You tell yourself you'll just check for a minute. 1 minute turns into 5, 5 turns into 20. You finally pull yourself away, feeling vaguely disgusted. You promise yourself you won't do it again. 2 hours later, you're back. Same app, same scroll, same disgust. Why do you keep doing something you hate? It's not weakness. It's not lack of discipline. You're caught in a loop, and the loop is designed to be unbreakable unless you understand how it works. Here's the thing most people miss. You're not addicted to the content. You're addicted to the hunt, the anticipation, the possibility that this next scroll, this next refresh, might give you something good. Your brain doesn't care if it actually does. The craving comes from the chase itself. This chapter is about breaking that loop, not by becoming a digital monk, not by deleting everything and moving to the woods, by understanding the mechanism and redesigning your environment so the loop loses its grip. If you don't do this, everything else collapses. Your attention defense fails. Your learning never gets consistent. The urges override your intentions every single time. But once you break the loop, something shifts. You stop feeling controlled. You stop negotiating with yourself. And you redirect all that seeking energy into something that actually builds you up. The engineering behind your cravings. Platforms don't accidentally make you check compulsively. They engineer it. And the core mechanism is brilliant in its simplicity. Variable rewards. Here's how it works. When a reward is predictable, your brain stops craving it. You know what you're getting, so the anticipation fades. But when a reward is unpredictable, sometimes you get something good, sometimes you don't, your brain goes into hunting mode. It releases motivation chemicals not when you get the reward, but in anticipation of it. The uncertainty itself becomes the hook. Every time you open a feed, you're pulling a slot machine lever. Maybe this time there's something interesting. Maybe someone liked your post. Maybe there's a message. Maybe not. You don't know. And that not knowing keeps you coming back. Constant novelty amplifies this. Every scroll reveals something new, a different image, a different headline, a different face. Your brain is wired to pay attention to novelty because novelty used to signal important information: food, danger, opportunity. Feeds exploit this by serving endless newness. Your brain never gets a chance to habituate. It stays alert, seeking, hunting. Then there's social feedback. Likes, comments, shares, views. These tap into deep social wiring. Your brain treats social validation as a survival signal. More approval equals more safety, more status, more belonging. Platforms turn this into a game you can't stop playing. You post something, you wait, you check. Did anyone respond? The waiting is the craving. The checking is the compulsion. Over time, just checking becomes reflex. You don't decide to open the app. Your hand just does it. Anticipation is the hook. Repetition is the cement. The more you repeat the behavior, the more automatic it becomes. Eventually, you're checking without even realizing you're doing it. What the loop steals from you. The loop doesn't just waste your time, it rewires your motivation system. Your brain learns to prefer low-effort hits over slow-earned satisfaction. Why spend an hour learning something when you can get a dopamine spike in 3 seconds? The loop trains impatience. It trains you to expect rewards immediately, and when learning doesn't deliver that instant payoff, because real learning never does, it feels wrong, boring, not worth it. You lose motivation for hard tasks. Anything that requires sustained effort starts to feel like punishment. Your brain has been trained to seek the path of least resistance, and learning is never the path of least resistance, so you avoid it. You tell yourself you'll do it later. You never do. You lose patience for slow learning. Mastery takes time. Skills develop gradually. Understanding deepens in layers. But the loop has taught your brain to expect fast results. When progress is slow, you interpret it as failure. You quit. You switch to something easier. You stay shallow. Most insidiously, you lose trust in your own choices. You can't commit to anything because the loop keeps whispering that something better is one scroll away. You start projects and abandon them. You choose a subject and second-guess it. You make a plan and immediately wonder if there's a better plan. The loop keeps you in a state of perpetual maybe. The myths that keep you trapped. Most people try to break the loop with strategies that sound reasonable but don't work. I'll quit when I feel ready. The loop blocks readiness. As long as you're in it, you'll never feel ready. The craving will always feel stronger than your intention. Action creates readiness, not the other way around. You have to break the loop first. The feeling follows. I can moderate without changing structure. No, you can't. Exposure keeps the craving alive. If the app is on your phone, you'll check it. If you check it, the loop restarts. Moderation requires willpower. Willpower runs out. Structure changes exposure. Structure wins. I just need a stricter mindset. Mindset helps, but environment decides. You can have the strongest intentions in the world, but if your environment is designed to trigger the loop, you'll lose. Every time. You're not fighting yourself. You're fighting a billion-dollar system engineered to exploit your brain's weaknesses. Mindset alone isn't enough. Installing friction rules. Here's how you start breaking the loop. You make checking harder. Not impossible, just harder. Every extra step between impulse and action gives your brain a chance to catch itself. Log out after each use, every single time. This sounds annoying. It is. That's the point. When you have to type your password to check, you create a pause. In that pause, you can ask yourself, do I actually want to do this, or is this just the loop? Most of the time, it's the loop, and most of the time that pause is enough to stop you. Remove apps from your home screen. Put them in a folder. Put that folder on the last page. Make yourself swipe, search, and tap multiple times to get there. Again, this creates friction. The loop thrives on instant access. Take away instant access, and the loop weakens. Disable non-human alerts. Turn off every notification that isn't a direct message from a real person. No likes, no comments, no someone posted in a group you follow. These alerts are loop triggers. They create false urgency. They pull you back in. Kill them. Now comes the hard part. Schedule 2 fixed check windows. Choose exact times, maybe 1 p.m. and 7 p.m., maybe 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. Doesn't matter when. What matters is that you only check during those windows. No checking outside them. No exceptions. This feels brutal at first. Your brain will scream. It will tell you that you need to check now. You don't. That's the loop talking. Stick to the windows. The urges will weaken over time, but only if you don't feed them. Redirecting the seeking energy. Here's the move that changes everything. When the urge to check hits, start a learning block instead. The urge is real. It's energy, but it doesn't have to go towards scrolling. You can redirect it. The moment you feel the pull to check, open your learning material. Even 5 minutes counts. Read one page, practice one exercise, watch one lesson. Anything that moves you toward your subject. Then track the win immediately. Write one sentence. I understand X better now. That's your new reward. Your brain needs feedback. It needs to know that the effort paid off. Give it that feedback, and over time, it learns to crave progress more than novelty. This isn't about replacing one addiction with another. It's about training your brain to seek satisfaction from depth instead of from shallow hits. Learning delivers real rewards, competence, clarity, growth. But those rewards are delayed. You have to teach your brain to wait for them, and you do that by consistently pairing effort with acknowledgement. Small moves that compound. After each learning session, write one thing you understand better, not a long journal entry. One sentence. I get how X connects to Y now. I can do Z without looking it up. This creates a competing reward loop. Your brain starts associating learning with progress. Progress feels good. Over time, it starts to feel better than scrolling. Use what I call urge surfing. When the craving hits, don't fight it. Notice it. Label it. That's the loop trying to restart. Then wait. Urges are like waves. They rise, peak, and fall. If you don't act on them, they pass, usually within 60 seconds. Sit with the discomfort. Let the wave crash. It will. Replace idle moments before they happen. You know when you're most vulnerable. Waiting in line, sitting on the couch, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Pre-plan 2 offline defaults for these moments. A book you keep in your bag. A notebook for thinking. Something that doesn't require a screen. Make these easier to access than your apps. What success looks like. At minimum, the urges lose intensity. You still feel them, but they don't drag you. You notice the pull and let it pass. You don't feel controlled anymore. Push further, and checking becomes intentional. You decide when to look, not the platform. You open the app because you chose to, not because your hand moved on autopilot. That shift from reflex to choice is everything. At the best outcome, learning becomes your primary reward. You crave mastery more than novelty. Self-education feels satisfying on its own. You don't need external validation to keep going. The progress itself is enough. When it falls apart. The biggest trap is relapse during boredom. You'll have a moment where nothing feels interesting. Learning feels hard. The urge feels overwhelming. You'll tell yourself, just this once. Don't. Plan boredom replacements in advance. Have something ready that isn't scrolling and isn't learning. Walking, sitting quietly, staring at the wall, anything but feeding the loop. Another mistake, negotiating with yourself. Maybe I can check just once outside the window. No, rules beat moods. Stick to the windows. No exceptions. The moment you start negotiating, you've already lost. Finally, don't over-restrict and then rebound. If you go from 5 hours of scrolling to 0 overnight, you'll crack. Reduce exposure steadily. Shrink the windows gradually. Give your brain time to adjust. Sustainable change beats dramatic gestures every time. Breaking the loop isn't about purity. It's about control. Once you have control, you can build something that lasts. But control alone isn't enough. You need something deeper, a foundation that makes your mind resilient for the long haul. That's what we're building next. Chapter 5, Cognitive Reserve. You've defended your attention. You've broken the reward loops. You're starting to feel sharper. But here's the question nobody asks. What happens when life gets hard again? Stress hits. Deadlines pile up. Sleep gets short. Your carefully built focus starts to crack. And if all you've done is defend against brain rot, you'll slide right back into it the moment pressure returns. This is where most people fail. They treat mental sharpness like a temporary state instead of a permanent capacity. They fight brain rot like it's a one-time battle. It's not. It's a war of attrition. And if you want to win long-term, you need more than defense. You need armor. That armor is called cognitive reserve. And it's the difference between people who stay sharp for decades and people who fade the moment life gets noisy. The long game, you can win early. Here's what cognitive reserve actually is. Mental backup systems built through sustained learning. When you regularly challenge your brain with effortful thinking, you create extra neural routes, more pathways for attention, more connections for memory, more flexibility for reasoning. Think of it like this. If you only have one road to get somewhere and that road gets blocked, you're stuck. But if you've built multiple roads, different routes, different options, you can still get there. Cognitive reserve is those extra roads. It's what keeps your mind working even when conditions aren't perfect. You're building future sharpness now. Every learning session is a small deposit. It doesn't feel dramatic in the moment. 15 minutes of study doesn't transform you overnight, but those 15 minutes compound, day after day, week after week, month after month. The deposits stack, and eventually you have a reservoir of mental strength that most people never build. Without reserve, brain rot returns faster. Low challenge makes the brain drift back to shallow mode. You stop learning, and within weeks, the fog creeps back in. Focus weakens, memory gets leaky again. You're back where you started. Reserve makes depth your default. It locks in the gains so they don't evaporate the moment you ease up. This is the long game, and the beautiful part? You can start winning it today. What reserve actually does for you? Cognitive reserve isn't some abstract neuroscience concept. It shows up in real, tangible ways. Mental resilience created by learning. When your brain is regularly challenged, it gets better at handling complexity, not just in the subject you're studying, but across everything. Your thinking becomes more flexible. You can hold more variables in your head. You can switch contexts without losing your place. You can reason through problems that used to feel overwhelming. Extra routes for attention and memory. When you learn something deeply, your brain doesn't just store it in one place. It creates multiple connections, different angles, different associations. So when you need to recall something or focus on something, you have more pathways to access it. Your memory becomes more stable. Your attention becomes more reliable. Here's how reserve fights brain rot directly. Effort rebuilds focus stamina. Every time you push through something slightly hard, you're training your brain to tolerate difficulty. That tolerance transfers. You get better at staying with hard tasks in general, not just the one you're studying. Meaningful learning reinforces deep processing. When you engage with material that requires real thinking, not just passive consumption, you're strengthening the neural circuits that handle depth. Over time, deep processing stops feeling like effort and starts feeling normal. Skills create confidence that replaces scrolling comfort. When you can actually do something, solve a problem, build something, explain a concept, you feel capable. That feeling is addictive in the best way. It replaces the hollow comfort of scrolling with the real satisfaction of competence. The type of learning that builds reserve. Not all learning builds reserve. Watching videos passively doesn't do it. Skimming articles doesn't do it. Collecting information without processing it doesn't do it. Reserve comes from new skills that feel slightly hard. Not crushing, not impossible, just hard enough that you have to think, hard enough that you can't coast. When you're learning something that stretches you just a little beyond your current ability, your brain has to adapt. That adaptation is what builds reserve. It comes from concepts that force you to think in layers. Surface-level facts don't create strong neural connections. But when you have to understand why something works, how it connects to other things, what happens if you change one variable, that's layered thinking. That's what creates durable mental models. It comes from practice that demands explanation, not just exposure. You can read about something 100 times and still not own it, but the moment you have to explain it in your own words, your brain shifts into a different mode. It has to organize the information. It has to find the structure. It has to make meaning. That's the work that builds reserve. The lies that keep you weak. Most people sabotage their own reserve building with myths that sound true but aren't. My brain is just like this now. No, it's not. Your brain is adaptive, not fixed. It becomes what you repeatedly ask of it. If you've been asking it to skim and react, it got good at skimming and reacting. If you start asking it to think deeply and learn deliberately, it will get good at that too. Habits shape capacity. always. Reserve is only about age. Wrong. Reserve starts building the moment you learn. A 20-year-old who never challenges their brain will have weaker cognitive capacity than a 50-year-old who learns daily. Young minds rot too if untrained. Age is a factor, but training is the deciding factor. Any content counts as learning. This is the most dangerous myth. Passive intake doesn't build reserve. Watching educational videos feels productive, but if you're not actively processing the information, you're not building anything. Effortful processing does. Retrieval does. Explanation does. Exposure alone does nothing. The minimum viable learning streak. Here's how you start building reserve today. Pick one subject, lock it for 90 days. No switching, no topic hopping. One subject, 90 days, done. Study 15 minutes daily. No exceptions. Not when you're tired, not when you're busy, not when you don't feel like it. 15 minutes every single day. If time collapses and you genuinely can't find 15 minutes, do 5. 5 is better than 0. 0 breaks the streak. 0 resets progress. This isn't about heroic effort. It's about relentless consistency. Your brain doesn't care if you study for 3 hours once a week. It cares about daily repetition, daily signals that say this matters, daily practice that forces adaptation. Start easy enough to show up. If the material is too hard on day 1, you'll quit. Begin with something accessible, something you can actually do. Then raise difficulty slowly. Add challenge weekly so growth is forced. Your brain adapts to the demands you place on it. If you keep the demands constant, adaptation stops. If you increase demands gradually, adaptation continues. Track reserve signals. You won't see dramatic changes overnight, but you will notice subtle shifts. Longer focus windows. You can stay with a task for 40 minutes when you used to max out at 20. Faster recovery after distractions. You get interrupted, but you return to your work without losing your place. More confidence with complex material. Things that used to feel overwhelming start to feel manageable. These signals tell you the reserve is building. Trust them. The mindset shift that changes everything. Treat learning like training, not entertainment. Training isn't always fun. It's not always exciting. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's repetitive. Sometimes you'd rather do anything else. You show up anyway, because boring is how strength is built. Use what I call edge practice. Spend the last 3 minutes of each session on what you don't know. Not what you're comfortable with. Not what you've already mastered. The thing that's still hard. The concept that doesn't quite click. The skill you can't quite execute. Weak spots are where reserve grows. Comfort zones are where it stagnates. Borrow the mindset of master learners. Da Vinci studied across fields for life: anatomy, engineering, art, mathematics. He never stopped learning. Marie Curie learned through relentless repetition, refining her understanding through thousands of experiments. Winners don't stop at competence. They keep pushing. They keep building. They know that learning isn't a phase. It's a way of living. What winning looks like. At minimum, you'll experience clearer thinking. The fog lifts. You feel less mentally sluggish. You can follow long arguments again without losing the thread. Your mind feels sharper, more responsive. Push further, and you'll develop stronger mental stamina. You stay focused under stress. Pressure doesn't fragment your attention like it used to. You return to tasks faster after interruptions. Your brain has built the capacity to handle noise without collapsing. At the best outcome, you achieve durable cognitive resilience. Learning keeps getting easier over time. Not because the material gets simpler, but because your brain gets stronger. Brain rot loses its grip permanently. You've built something that can't be easily eroded. When it falls apart. The biggest mistake is trying to sprint. You decide to study 2 hours a day, starting tomorrow. You last 3 days, then you crash, then you quit. Shrink the time, keep the daily streak. 15 minutes you can sustain beats 2 hours you can't. Another trap, choosing something that doesn't matter to you. You pick a subject because it sounds impressive or because someone told you to. You force yourself through it for a week. Then you stop. If the subject doesn't pull you, change the angle or application, not the subject. Find a way to make it personally relevant. Finally, don't expect visible gains too fast. Reserve builds slowly. You won't feel dramatically smarter after week 1. Measure commitment, not speed. Did you show up today? That's the only metric that matters early on. The results will come, but only if you stay consistent long enough to let them. Reserve is your foundation. It's what makes everything else sustainable. But foundation alone isn't enough. You need fuel. You need something that pulls you forward when discipline fades. That's what we're building next. Chapter 6, Curiosity Fuel. You've built the defenses. You've started the streak. You're showing up daily. But here's the problem. Showing up feels like dragging yourself uphill. You're doing it, but it's hard. Every session requires negotiation. Every day you have to convince yourself all over again. This won't last. Discipline is a battery. It runs out. You can force yourself to study for a week, maybe 2, but eventually the resistance wins. You skip a day, then another, then you're back to scrolling, wondering why you can't stick with anything. Here's what most people miss. You're fighting the wrong battle. You're trying to out-discipline your own disinterest. You can't. Nobody can. Not long term. The real move isn't to push harder, it's to choose smarter. Because when you pick something you actually care about, something that pulls you forward instead of something you have to drag yourself toward, everything changes. Effort feels lighter. Attention comes naturally. Consistency stops being a negotiation. That pull is curiosity, and it's the difference between learning that dies in week 3 and learning that lasts for years. Why discipline always loses to curiosity. Willpower is finite. You wake up with a certain amount. Every decision, every resistance, every "I should do this instead of that" drains it. By the end of the day, the tank is empty. That's why you can study in the morning but scroll at night. That's why your streak breaks on stressful days. You ran out of fuel. Curiosity is different. It's a generator, not a battery. It doesn't deplete. It renews. When you're genuinely curious about something, you don't have to force yourself to engage. You want to. The pull is internal. It doesn't cost willpower. It creates energy. Without curiosity, learning becomes fragile. The moment progress slows, and it always slows, you stop. You tell yourself it's too hard. You tell yourself you're not good at it. You drift back to the feed because the feed doesn't require effort. It doesn't challenge you. It doesn't make you feel incompetent. But with curiosity, slow progress doesn't kill you. It intrigues you. You want to figure out why it's hard. You want to understand the gap. You keep going not because you should, but because you genuinely want to know what's on the other side. The cognitive defense you didn't know you had. Curiosity isn't just motivation, it's a defense system against brain rot. When you're curious, you naturally engage in deep processing. You don't skim, you dig. You ask questions, you make connections, you think in layers. All the things that build cognitive reserve happen automatically when curiosity is driving. Curiosity increases effort tolerance. Hard things don't feel like punishment, they feel like puzzles. You're not grinding through difficulty, you're exploring it. That shift, from enduring to exploring, changes everything. Suddenly, the boring parts aren't obstacles, they're part of the journey. Here's the contrast that matters. Should learn versus want to learn. Should creates resistance. It's external pressure. Someone told you this is important. Society says you need this skill. Your resume would look better with this knowledge. All of that might be true. But it doesn't create pull. It creates obligation, and obligation burns out. Want creates momentum. It's internal drive. You're learning because something about this subject fascinates you, because it connects to something you care about, because understanding it would make your life better in a way that matters to you personally. That's the fuel that doesn't run out. How to pick a subject that actually hooks you. This is where most people go wrong. They choose based on what sounds impressive, what looks good, what other people are learning. They pick subjects that should matter instead of subjects that do matter to them. Personal pull beats social approval every time. If you're learning something to impress others, you'll quit the moment the validation stops coming. But if you're learning because you genuinely care, external validation becomes irrelevant. You'd do it even if nobody knew. Emotional relevance beats practicality. You might think you should learn the most useful skill, the most marketable knowledge, the thing that will advance your career fastest. But if it doesn't connect to something you emotionally care about, it won't stick. Better to learn something less practical that you're actually drawn to than something more practical that bores you to death. The question isn't, what should I learn? The question is, what do I actually want to understand? The myths that keep you stuck in neutral. Most people sabotage their own curiosity with beliefs that sound true but aren't. I need to find my passion first. No, you don't. Passion isn't found, it's built. You don't stumble upon the perfect subject and suddenly feel lifelong devotion. You engage with something, you get better at it, you start to see deeper layers, and attachment grows. Interest grows after exposure, not before it. Motivation comes before action. Wrong order. Action creates motivation. You start doing something, you make a little progress, you feel competent, and that feeling makes you want to continue. Waiting for motivation to arrive before you start is like waiting to feel hungry before you learn to cook. It doesn't work that way. If I'm not excited daily, I chose wrong. Every subject has boring phases, every single one. There will be days when the material feels dry, days when progress is invisible, days when you'd rather do anything else. Boring phases are where winners separate from losers. Winners push through. Losers interpret boredom as a sign they picked wrong and start over with something new. They never get deep enough to reach the interesting parts. The spark test. Here's how you find your subject. List 5 things you're even slightly drawn to. Not things you think you should learn. Things that make you curious. Things you've wondered about. Things you'd explore if nobody was watching. Spend 30 minutes with each one. Not researching whether it's worth learning. Actually engaging with the material. Read an article. Watch a lesson. Try a basic exercise. Get your hands dirty. Track which one makes time disappear. Which one pulls you in so you forget to check your phone? Which one leaves you with more questions than you started with? That's your signal. That's the spark. Now lock it. 90 days. No switching subjects during that window. This is critical. Your brain will try to bail when things get hard. It will tell you that maybe one of the other subjects would be better. Don't listen. Switching methods is allowed. Read one day, practice another, explain it to someone another day. But the subject stays locked. Build identity alignment around it. Don't say, I'm trying to learn X. Say, I'm the kind of person who studies X. That shift from trying to being changes how your brain treats the activity. It's not something you're testing out. It's part of who you are. Let identity drive consistency. Small moves that keep the spark alive. Attach the subject to your life. Ask yourself, where does this show up in my world? If you're learning a language, where could you use it? If you're learning a technical skill, what could you build? If you're learning history, how does it explain what you see around you? Meaning increases endurance. The more you connect the subject to your actual life, the more it matters. Use method variety to keep things fresh. Don't just read every day. Mix it up. Read one day. Practice the next. Explain what you learned to someone else another day. Watch a video. Do an exercise. Build something. The subject stays the same, but the approach changes. This prevents the monotony that kills curiosity. Keep a curiosity list. As you study, questions will arise. Things you don't understand yet. Connections you want to explore. Write them down. These become your future targets. They keep you oriented toward discovery instead of just completion. What success looks like. At minimum, learning feels lighter. You still have to show up, but the resistance at start time drops. You don't have to negotiate with yourself as much. You sit down and begin without the internal argument. Push further and self-education becomes automatic. You study without negotiating. It's just what you do. Like someone who runs every morning doesn't debate whether to run. They just go. The habit is locked in because the pull is real. At the best outcome, curiosity becomes your default state. You seek depth naturally. You see something interesting, and your first instinct is to dig, not to skim and move on. The feed loses appeal because it can't compete with the satisfaction of actually understanding something. When it falls apart, the biggest trap is choosing status over interest. You pick something because it looks good on paper, because people will be impressed, because it's the smart choice. But if you don't actually care, you'll quit. Pick what you'd learn even if nobody knew. That's the only sustainable choice. Another mistake, the spark fades after week 2. This happens. The novelty wears off. The initial excitement dims. You start to wonder if you chose wrong. You didn't. Change the method. Add real-world application. Find a way to use what you're learning immediately. The spark doesn't need to stay at the same intensity. It just needs to stay lit. Finally, watch for subject hopping as procrastination. You get bored or stuck, so you switch to something new. Then you get bored or stuck again, so you switch again. You're always a beginner. You never get deep. The 90-day lock exists to prevent this. No exceptions. Stick with it long enough to get past the surface. Curiosity is your fuel. But fuel alone doesn't get you anywhere without a map. You need structure. You need a system that turns scattered interest into organized progress. That's what we're building next. Chapter 7, Learning System. You've got the subject. You're showing up daily. You're curious. But here's what happens next. You sit down to study and immediately face a wall of choices. Which resource should you use today? Should you watch a video or read an article? Should you review what you learned yesterday or push forward to new material? Should you check that forum post or stick with the book? 10 minutes pass. You're still deciding. The session feels scattered. You finish feeling busy, but not sure what you actually learned. This is the hidden killer of self-education. Not lack of effort, not lack of interest. Chaos. Most people treat learning like browsing. They collect resources, they bookmark articles, they save videos, they join communities, they follow experts, and then they drown in options. Every session becomes an improvisation. Every day they're starting from scratch, trying to figure out what to do next. You can't build mastery that way. You can only build confusion. Structure is the bridge from effort to mastery. Without it, you're just spinning. With it, you're climbing. And the difference isn't complicated. You don't need a PhD-level curriculum. You need 3 things. That's it. 3 anchors that turn random learning into systematic progress. Why structure beats motivation every time? When you improvise daily, you burn energy on decisions that don't matter. What should I study today? Where should I start? Is this the right resource? Should I switch to something else? Every one of those questions drains cognitive capacity. By the time you actually start learning, you're already tired. Structure eliminates that waste. You know exactly what to do next. You sit down, you execute, you move forward. No debate, no decision fatigue. Your brain can focus entirely on the learning itself instead of on figuring out what to learn. Without structure, the feed wins. Because the feed is structured. It knows exactly what to show you next. It removes all friction. It makes consumption effortless. When your learning is chaotic and the feed is smooth, guess which one you'll default to when you're tired. You drift toward the easiest input. You mistake novelty for progress. You watch 10 different videos on the same topic and feel productive, but you didn't build anything. You just consumed variations of the same surface-level information. Structure prevents that. It forces you to go deep instead of wide. It makes you stack knowledge instead of collecting it. The 3 anchors that hold everything together. Here's the system. It's simple, almost too simple, but simple is what works. You need a foundational resource. This is your path, a course or book that runs from basics to advanced. One thing you follow in order, not 5 books, not 10 courses, one spine that gives you sequence. This is what you work through most days. This is your primary source of structured progression. Why does this matter? Because learning isn't random. Concepts build on each other. Skills develop in stages. If you're jumping between resources, you're constantly restarting. You never get past the beginner phase because you keep switching before you reach intermediate material. The foundational resource keeps you moving forward in a logical order. You need an expert. This is your compass. One trusted voice who sets quality standards and shows you what matters versus what doesn't. Not 10 experts with conflicting advice. One person whose judgment you trust. Someone who's already mastered what you're trying to learn and can point you in the right direction when you're lost. The expert doesn't replace your foundational resource. They complement it. They give you perspective. They help you see the bigger picture. They show you what good looks like. When you're confused about whether you're on the right track, you check what the expert says. When you're overwhelmed by options, you ask, what would they recommend? You need a community. This is your training arena, a space where you can ask real questions, get real feedback, and feel real accountability. Not a passive audience, not a place to lurk, an active environment where you engage, contribute, and test your understanding against others who are learning the same thing. Community adds what solo learning can't: correction and context. You think you understand something, you explain it, someone points out the gap, you fix it. That loop accelerates growth faster than anything else. Plus, seeing others struggle with the same challenges makes you feel less alone. Seeing others succeed shows you it's possible. The lies that keep you scattered. Most people sabotage their own structure with myths that sound smart but aren't. More resources means faster learning. No, more resources usually means more confusion. You end up comparing approaches, second-guessing yourself, and never committing to one path long enough to see results. One great resource beats 10 mediocre ones. Always. I'll organize later after I explore. Exploration without a spine becomes noise. You collect information without processing it. You expose yourself to ideas without integrating them. You feel like you're learning because you're consuming, but nothing sticks. Organization isn't something you do after learning. It's how you learn. I can self-learn purely alone. Isolation slows correction. You make mistakes and don't realize it. You develop bad habits and cement them. You miss obvious shortcuts because nobody's there to point them out. Feedback accelerates growth. You don't need a formal teacher, but you need some form of external input. Community provides that. Building your triad in 1 hour. Here's how you set this up. 60 minutes. That's all it takes. Choose one foundational resource. This could be a textbook, an online course, a structured video series, a comprehensive guide. The key criteria: it covers your subject from basics to advanced, it's organized sequentially, and it's complete enough that you could follow it for months. Spend 20 minutes researching options. Pick one. Lock it in. Choose one expert voice to follow. This could be a practitioner, a teacher, a writer, a YouTuber, anyone who's demonstrably skilled in your subject and shares their knowledge publicly. Look for someone whose explanations make sense to you, someone whose judgment you respect. Spend 20 minutes finding them. Pick one. Follow them. Choose one community space to participate in. This could be a forum, a Discord server, a subreddit, a study group, a local meetup. The key criteria: active members, helpful culture, focused on your subject. Spend 20 minutes finding it. Join one. Commit to engaging at least once a week. That's your triad: one resource, one expert, one community. Everything else is noise. The weekly rhythm that builds momentum. Now you need a simple sequence. 4 days a week, you work through your foundational resource. You follow the order. You don't skip ahead. You don't jump around. You move through it systematically, one section at a time. 1 day a week, you engage with your expert's content. Read their latest article, watch their recent video, listen to their podcast. This gives you fresh perspective and keeps you connected to what mastery looks like. 1 day a week, you participate in your community. You ask a question about something you're stuck on. You answer someone else's question if you can. You share what you learned that week. This forces you to articulate your understanding and get feedback. That's your week: simple, repeatable, sustainable. At the end of each session, write one line, your next task. Not a full plan, just the next specific step. Continue from Chapter 5. Practice Exercise 12. Ask the community about X. This prevents decision paralysis. When you sit down tomorrow, you read that line and start immediately. Small rules that prevent chaos. Cap your searching time. 30 minutes per week maximum for finding new resources. If something doesn't fit your spine, if it's not directly supporting your foundational resource, expert, or community, ignore it. Bookmark it if you must, but don't engage with it now. You're not collecting, you're building. Use your expert as a filter. When you're tempted to explore a tangent or try a different approach, ask, would my expert recommend this? If the answer is no or unclear, move on. Trust the compass you chose. Don't second-guess it every week. Use community strategically. Enter with a specific question. Get what you need. Exit. Don't scroll through every thread. Don't get sucked into debates. Don't let it become another feed. Participate with intent, then leave. What winning looks like. At minimum, you stop wandering. Every session has direction. You sit down knowing exactly what you're doing. You finish knowing exactly what you accomplished. The fog of, I'm learning, but I don't know what, disappears. Push further, and you build your own curriculum. You know what to do for months ahead. You can see the path from where you are to where you want to be. You're not dependent on external structure anymore. You've internalized the system. At the best outcome, you develop lifelong self-directed learning ability. You can master any subject without needing a teacher. You know how to find the right resources, follow the right experts, and engage the right communities. You've learned how to learn. That skill transfers to everything. When it falls apart. The biggest trap is endless resource hunting. You keep searching for the perfect course, the best book, the ideal community. You never commit. You're always in research mode, never in execution mode. Cap the search time, obey the spine. Good enough, and started beats perfect and delayed. Another mistake, expert overload. You follow 10 people and get 10 different opinions. You're paralyzed by conflicting advice. Pick one main expert for 90 days. You can explore others later, but right now you need one clear voice. Finally, watch for community turning into distraction. You join to get feedback and end up spending hours reading threads that don't help you. You're socializing, not learning. Participate with intent. Ask your question. Get your answer. Leave. Come back next week. Structure is your skeleton. It holds everything together. But structure alone doesn't make knowledge stick. You can follow the perfect system and still forget everything a week later. That's what we fix next. Chapter 8. Make it stick. You studied for an hour yesterday. You understood everything. It made perfect sense. Today, you sit down to continue and realize you remember almost nothing. The concepts feel vaguely familiar, but you can't explain them. You can't use them. It's like you never learned them at all. This is the moment most people quit. They think the problem is them. They think they're bad at learning. They think their memory is broken. So they give up and go back to scrolling, where at least they don't have to face the frustration of forgetting. But here's the truth. Forgetting is normal. It's not a bug. It's how memory works. The problem isn't that you forgot. The problem is that you never trained yourself to remember. If learning doesn't stick, it didn't happen. Time spent without retention is just time spent. You can study for 100 hours and walk away with nothing if you're doing it wrong. But if you understand how memory actually works, and more importantly, how to make it work for you, everything changes. You move from I saw that once to I can actually use this. From passive exposure to active mastery. This chapter is about making the gains permanent, because sticking power is what beats brain rot long term. Deep processing fights shallow habits. Durable knowledge becomes your new baseline, and once knowledge sticks, it compounds. The difference between seeing and knowing. Most people confuse recognition with knowledge. You read something, it makes sense, you nod along, you feel like you learned it. Then a week later, someone asks you to explain it, and you can't. You recognize it when you see it again, but you don't own it. Recognition is passive. It's your brain saying, I've seen this before. Knowledge is active. It's your brain saying, I can reconstruct this from scratch. The gap between those two states is everything, and the bridge across that gap is retrieval. Memory strengthens when you retrieve, not when you reread. Every time you force your brain to pull information from memory without looking, Without prompts, you're strengthening the neural pathway. You're making that knowledge more accessible, more durable, more yours. Rereading feels productive. It feels like learning, but it's mostly an illusion. You're recognizing information you just saw. Your brain isn't working hard. It's coasting, and coasting doesn't build strength. Testing yourself feels harder. It feels uncomfortable. You get things wrong. You struggle. But that struggle is the signal that real learning is happening. Your brain is working to reconstruct the information, and that work is what makes it stick. The 4 pillars of permanent learning. There are 4 mechanisms that turn temporary exposure into lasting mastery. You need all 4. Skip one, and your learning stays fragile. Active recall is the first pillar. After you study something, close the material and explain it in your own words. Write it down or say it out loud. If you can't do it, you didn't learn it. Go back, review, and try again. This forces your brain to retrieve instead of recognize. It's uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. Spaced repetition is the second pillar. Revisiting information over time locks it in, not immediately, not all at once, over days and weeks. Your brain needs time to consolidate. It needs to forget just enough that retrieving becomes effortful again. That effort is what strengthens the memory. Review too soon, and it's too easy. Review too late, and you've lost it completely. The sweet spot is right when it starts to fade. Deliberate practice is the third pillar. Work on what's hard, not what's easy. Most people practice what they're already good at because it feels good. But growth happens at the edge of your ability. Find the thing you can't quite do yet. Spend time there. That's where your brain has to adapt. That's where skill develops. Why first understanding is the fourth pillar. Don't just memorize steps. Understand the cause. Know why something works, not just how. When you understand the underlying principle, the skill becomes portable. You can apply it in new contexts. You can adapt it when conditions change. You're not following a script. You're thinking. These 4 pillars work together. Retrieve what you learned. Space the retrieval over time. Practice the hard parts deliberately. Understand the why behind everything. Do this consistently, and knowledge becomes permanent. The lies that keep you forgetting. Most people sabotage their own retention with beliefs that sound reasonable but aren't. If I forget, I'm bad at this. No. Forgetting is normal. It's part of the process. Your brain is designed to forget things that don't seem important. Retrieval is how you signal importance. Every time you successfully recall something, you're telling your brain, keep this. The forgetting isn't failure. It's the setup for stronger learning. Exposure equals learning. This is the most dangerous myth. You watch a video, you read an article, you attend a lecture, you feel like you learned because you were exposed to information. But exposure is just the first step. It's not the finish line. Learning happens when you process, retrieve, and apply. Exposure without those steps is entertainment, not education. I need to feel progress daily. Progress is lumpy early on. Some days you'll feel like you're getting it. Other days you'll feel like you're moving backward. That's normal. Consistency smooths it out. If you show up daily and do the work, progress accumulates even when you can't see it. Trust the process, not the feeling. The retention loop that actually works. Here's the system. It's simple, but you have to follow it exactly. After each study session, write a short explanation in your own words. Not a summary of what you read. An explanation of what you understood. If you're learning a concept, explain how it works. If you're learning a skill, explain what you did and why. This is your first retrieval. It happens immediately while the information is fresh. The next day, recall the key idea without looking. Don't reread your notes first. Don't peek at the material. Just try to remember. Write it down or say it out loud. Check yourself afterward. Correct any gaps. This is your second retrieval. It happens when the memory is starting to fade, but still accessible. 1 week later, recall again. Same process. No looking, just retrieve. Then correct. This is your third retrieval. By now, the memory is significantly weaker. The effort required to pull it back is higher. That effort is what locks it in long term. This is the 1 day, 1 week loop. It's not optional. It's the mechanism that makes learning stick. Skip it, and you're just exposing yourself to information over and over without building real memory. Now add weak spot targeting. At the end of each session, identify the hardest point, the concept that didn't quite click, the skill you couldn't quite execute, the part that felt confusing. Write it down. Next session, spend the first 5 minutes on that point. Don't avoid it. Don't skip to easier material. Attack the weakness directly. That's where growth lives. Finally, use the why chain. When you learn something, ask, why does this work? Then ask why again. Then ask why a third time. Keep going until you hit a root explanation, a fundamental principle that doesn't need further explanation. This builds causal understanding. It turns memorized steps into portable knowledge. Preventing the topic-hopping trap. Here's the consistency killer. You get bored or stuck, so you switch subjects. You tell yourself you'll come back later. You never do. You're always a beginner because you never stay long enough to get deep. Lock your subject for 90 days, no exceptions. If you're bored, change the method. Read one day, practice another, watch a video, explain it to someone, build something with it. The subject stays fixed. The approach can vary. This keeps things fresh without sacrificing depth. Track days completed, not moods. You'll have days when you feel motivated, days when you don't, days when progress feels fast, days when it feels slow. None of that matters. What matters is, did you show up? Did you do the work? Mark the day? Move forward. The streak is the metric. Small moves that accelerate mastery. Explain aloud like you're teaching someone. Pretend there's a student in front of you who knows nothing about this subject. Walk them through it step by step. If you can teach it clearly, you own it. If you stumble, you've found a gap. Fill it. Keep a mistake list. Every time you get something wrong, write it down. Your errors aren't failures. They're data. They show you exactly what you don't understand yet. They point to the next lesson. Review this list weekly. Watch the same mistakes stop appearing. That's progress you can measure. Use micro-challenges. Once a week, apply what you're learning to something real. Even if it's tiny, even if it's imperfect. Build something, solve a problem, explain it to a friend. Applications glue knowledge to life. They make abstract concepts concrete. They show you what you actually know versus what you think you know. What success looks like. At minimum, you achieve real retention. You recall ideas weeks later without having to relearn them. You can explain concepts without looking them up. The knowledge is there when you need it. Push further, and you develop confident application. You use skills without needing prompts or guides. You can adapt what you learn to new situations. You're not following a script, you're thinking with the tools you've built. At the best outcome, you experience compounding mastery. Each month feels easier than the last. Not because the material gets simpler, but because your brain gets stronger. You learn faster. You retain more. You connect ideas more quickly. Your mind starts craving depth because depth delivers real satisfaction. When it falls apart. The biggest trap is discouragement in the beginner stage. You're slow. You forget things. You make mistakes. You feel incompetent. This is normal. Measure streak length, not speed. Did you show up for 30 days straight? That's the win. Speed comes later. Another mistake, perfectionism. You want elegant explanations, flawless execution, perfect understanding before you move forward. That's not how learning works. Aim for reps, not elegance. Do the thing badly, then do it again, then again. Repetition builds skill. Waiting for perfection builds nothing. Watch for method boredom. Reading the same type of material every day gets stale. Rotate methods while keeping one subject. Read, practice, watch, explain, build. The variety keeps you engaged without fragmenting your focus. Finally, don't skip review. It feels like you should always be moving forward to new material. But review is what makes the old material permanent. Hard code the 1 day, 1 week loop. It's not optional. It's the difference between learning and forgetting. Retention is the foundation. But there's one more piece, one final shift that ties everything together and turns this from a temporary fix into a permanent way of being. That's where we're going next. Chapter 9, Your Comeback. You've made it here. That alone means something. Most people who started this book are already gone. They read chapter 1, felt the sting of recognition, and then drifted back to the feed. They wanted the feeling of change without the work of changing. You didn't. You stayed. You read. You absorbed. And now you're standing at the edge of something different. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of your comeback. Everything you've learned up to this point, the attention defense, the loop breaking, the reserve building, the curiosity fueling, the system building, the retention tactics, it all converges here. Not as separate strategies you execute in isolation, but as a unified way of living, a new operating system for your mind. You're not just avoiding brain rot anymore. You're becoming the person who doesn't need to avoid it because depth is your default. Learning is your reflex. Mastery is your trajectory. This chapter is about locking that in, about making the shift permanent, about stepping fully into the identity of someone who controls their attention, builds their knowledge, and keeps climbing long after everyone else has quit. What you've actually built. Let's be clear about what just happened. You didn't just read a book, you absorbed a framework. Brain rot is trained, shallow thinking. You understand now that it's not a character flaw or a permanent condition. It's a pattern created by repeated exposure to low-challenge inputs. Your brain adapted to what you fed it, and now you know how to feed it differently. Attention must be defended first. You can't learn if your focus is constantly being carved up. You've learned to create focus islands, to build friction around distractions, to protect your first hour, to treat attention like the finite, precious resource it is. This is your foundation. Everything else builds on this. Reward loops must be broken structurally. You understand now that you're not weak for scrolling compulsively. You're fighting a system designed to exploit your brain's wiring. Willpower loses. Structure wins. You've installed friction rules, fixed check windows, and competing rewards. You've redirected seeking energy into learning. The loop doesn't own you anymore. Cognitive reserve is built through hard learning. You're not chasing trivia, you're building mental armor. Every session of effortful learning creates new neural routes, strengthens existing ones, and makes your mind more resilient. You're playing the long game, and the long game compounds. Curiosity is the fuel for consistency. Discipline fades. Curiosity endures. You've learned to choose subjects that pull you forward instead of ones you have to drag yourself toward. You've locked your 90-day commitment. You've built identity alignment. Learning isn't something you do, it's who you are. A learning system prevents chaos. You've built your triad, one foundational resource, one expert, one community. You've created a weekly rhythm. You've eliminated decision fatigue. You know exactly what to do next, every time. No improvisation, no wandering, just steady, systematic progress. Retrieval, spacing, and practice make knowledge stick. You've learned the one-day, one-week loop. You've learned to target weak spots. You've learned to ask why 3 times. You've learned that exposure isn't learning, processing is. You're not collecting information anymore. You're building mastery. This is what you've built, and it's real. The power you now hold. Here's what this gives you. Here's what changes. You control your attention again. Not perfectly, not every moment, but most of the time. You can sit down to work and actually work. You can read without your mind wandering every paragraph. You can stay with hard tasks without bailing to the feed. Your attention is yours. That alone is revolutionary. You can teach yourself anything. This is the meta skill. Once you know how to learn, subject matter becomes secondary. You're not limited by what schools teach or what courses exist. You can pick any domain and systematically build competence. That freedom is permanent. You stop drifting and start directing. Your days aren't happening to you anymore. You're shaping them. You're choosing where your attention goes. You're choosing what you build. You're choosing who you become. Drift is passive. Direction is active. You've crossed that line. You trust your mind more each week. This might be the most important shift. You're not second-guessing yourself constantly. You're not deferring to external sources for every decision. You're thinking clearly. You're reasoning through problems. You're confident in your ability to figure things out. That confidence feeds itself. It grows. how this changes everything else. The benefits don't stay contained to learning, they spill over into everything. Your relationships improve. You're more present. When someone talks to you, you actually listen. You're not half scrolling mentally. You're not waiting for them to finish so you can check your phone. People feel it. They feel you're actually there. That presence is rare now. It matters. Your conversations get better. You bring depth instead of hot takes. You've been thinking about real ideas, not just reacting to headlines. You ask sharper questions. You follow complex threads. You can hold nuance. People notice. The shallow talkers start to bore you. The deep thinkers start to seek you out. Your patience increases. You've trained yourself to tolerate difficulty. That tolerance transfers. You're more patient with complexity in others. You're more patient with slow processes. You don't need constant stimulation to feel okay. You can sit with discomfort. You can wait. That's power. What you can do now that you couldn't before. Sustained focus for meaningful tasks. You can work on something important for an hour without fragmenting. You can read a difficult book. You can write something substantial. You can build something complex. The fog is gone. The restlessness is manageable. You can actually do deep work again. Real skill acquisition through self-education. You're not just consuming content about skills, you're building them. You're practicing deliberately. You're retaining what you learn. You're applying it. You're getting better, measurably better. That trajectory is yours now. Reading and thinking with depth again. You can follow long arguments. You can hold multiple ideas in your head simultaneously. You can reason through problems that used to feel overwhelming. Your mind works the way it's supposed to work. Sharp, clear, capable. The ability to stay on one subject long enough to master it. This might be the biggest unlock. You're not a perpetual beginner anymore. You can commit. You can push through the boring middle. You can reach the point where things start to click, where competence turns into confidence, where you're not just learning, you're mastering. Why it gets easier from here. Here's the beautiful part. The effort decreases while the results increase. Habits automate. Right now, showing up to study still requires some negotiation, but every day you do it, the negotiation gets quieter. Eventually, you just show up. No debate, no decision. It's what you do. Automation is the goal, and automation is coming. Knowledge compounds. Each new idea you learn attaches to a stronger base. The first month is hard because you're building from scratch. The second month is easier because you have context. The sixth month is easier still because everything connects. Learning accelerates, not because you're getting smarter, because you've built the foundation. Attention gets stronger through use. Focus is a muscle. You've been training it. It's getting stronger. What used to take all your willpower now takes half. What used to feel impossible now feels manageable. This trend continues. Your focus capacity keeps growing as long as you keep using it. This is the upward slope. You're on it now, and it doesn't stop unless you stop. Your first move. You know what to do. You've known since chapter 1, but now you have the full picture. Now you have the system. Now you have no excuses. Pick your one subject today, not tomorrow, today. What are you genuinely curious about? What do you want to understand? What skill would change your life if you had it? Choose. Lock it for 90 days. Write it down. Choose your foundational resource. One book, one course, one structured path from basics to advanced. Spend 20 minutes researching. Pick one. Buy it. Download it. Get it in front of you. Schedule tomorrow's 15-minute session. Put it in your calendar. Set a reminder. Decide exactly when and where you'll do it. Make it specific. Make it real. Write your first next task line. What's the first thing you'll do tomorrow? Read chapter 1. Watch lesson 1. Complete exercise 1. Write it down. That's your starting point. That's it. 4 moves. You can do all 4 in the next 30 minutes. And once you do, you're not preparing anymore. You're executing. The truth nobody tells you. Nobody is coming to rescue your attention. No app update will fix this. No life change will make it easier. No perfect moment will arrive where everything aligns and focus feels effortless. But here's the thing. You don't need rescuing. You need training. And training is what you just got. Start small. 15 minutes feels laughable. It feels like nothing. Good. Start there. You're not trying to transform overnight. You're trying to show up. Showing up is everything. Start ugly. Your first session will be messy. You'll get distracted, you'll forget things, you'll feel slow. Perfect. That's what starting looks like. Ugly is honest. Ugly is real. Ugly is the beginning of every beautiful thing. Start today, not Monday, not next month, not when life calms down. Today, right now, this moment. Because every day you learn, you win. Every day you drift, you lose. It's that simple, that brutal, that true. The person you're becoming. You're not the same person who started this book. You can feel it. Something shifted. You see the patterns now. You understand the mechanisms. You have the tools. But more than that, you have a choice, and you're making it. You're choosing depth over distraction, mastery over mediocrity, direction over drift. You're choosing to be the person who doesn't just consume, who builds, who doesn't just react, who creates, who doesn't just survive the digital age, who thrives in it. This is your comeback, not from failure, from fog, from the slow erosion of everything that makes thinking powerful and life meaningful. You're taking it back, your attention, your focus, your mind, your future. And you're not stopping here. This is just the beginning. Because once you learn how to learn, once you build the system, once you prove to yourself that you can do this, everything opens up. Every subject becomes accessible. Every skill becomes learnable. Every goal becomes reachable. You're not fighting brain rot anymore. You've already won that fight. Now you're building something bigger, something that lasts, something that compounds for decades. Welcome back. Your mind has been waiting for you. Now go build something extraordinary with it.